One of the first videos I ever made on my channel was an Eminem Discography ranking in 2016. Of course, you might not know that if you're watching from the US, because that video has been blocked there because of a copyright claim for about 6 years now. So considering that video is one, very outdated, MMLP 2 was the most recent Eminem album at the time, and two, most of my audience can't see that video anyway, I thought now would be a great time to re-rank Eminem's albums. The terrible lighting of this video is clearly a callback to my 2016 videos. Actually though, I've just got to get curtains in my new apartment. The blinds that it already has do a really bad job at blocking the sunlight from the outside, so yeah, the lighting will be a bit shifty in this video, but I did the best I could. And I'll be ranking them today all the way up to his most recent 2024 release, The Death of Slim Shady. And as a fun little bonus, this list will also include Hell the Sequel and Shady XV, or Shady 15, whatever you call it. I think XV sounds better. So without further ado, this is CDTVProductions, and let me share my most recent ranking of Eminem's albums with you.
I'm looking at your tight rear like a sightseer. Your booty is heavy duty, like diarrhea.
I've long been of the opinion that Encore is the worst Eminem album, but after some real reflection lately, Revival has changed that. In my opinion, this album does not have enough significant high points to justify how much it misses. This wasn't even an album that I hated at first or anything, but it has not aged well over the years. I think getting 3 or 4 albums in the years following this, where Eminem raps relatively smoothly, just makes the super choppy and awkward flows on tracks like Bad Husband and Chloroseptic really stand out.
But I just heard Mockingbird and got the urge to jot some verses and thoughts. The purpose was not to stir or open wounds, cut slices her twice, but the muck diver must just like it rough, fuck right in her vagina. Blood flies up on the visor.
I really forgot how bad the original Chloroseptic was, man. Those flows downright suck. And as for Bad Husband, I think that's a pretty good symbol of what I think is wrong with Revival as a whole. The content itself on it is absolutely fine. It could actually make for good songs, but so much of the album is watered down with poppy production.
But you ain't ruining our country, punk, or taking our pride from us. You won't define us, cause like a dictionary, things are looking up.
Poppy features. Stiff, weird-sounding flows.
The only time attention's paid to us in education sucks, and every day's another Freddie Gray for us. A levee breaks a buzz.
And honestly, Eminem's voice even sounding a little weird compared to his albums before and after this one. I do think Walk on Water works great as a vulnerable intro. I really like that one, but as you move further and further throughout Revival, that song feels like it was a warning of an extremely flawed album ahead. Shout out to the last 3 tracks though, they're a pretty impactful ending to an otherwise pretty weak Eminem album.
This was supposed to be my first single, but I just fucked that up so.
Eminem has always been a lover of vulgar stuff and toilet humor, but Encore is his most pee-pee poo-poo haha album, and it's just not great. I do think it's better than Revival now, which I don't think I felt before, but it still did break the streak of a fantastic 3-album run from M. Not to say I always dislike Silly Eminem, Just Lose It is one of the more enjoyable tracks on the album for me. But that's because I think that one does this style well. Eminem is energetic enough on it, it's so goofy, and the beat is so cartoonish and lively.
Now what's your name, girl? What's your sign?
Man, you must be about your mind.
Dre, beer goggles flying.
It's truly fun in its silliness, whereas a lot of Encore is just a bit lifeless and sad in its silliness. I mean, some of the absolute worst songs that Eminem has ever placed on his albums are right here. Rain Man, my first single, Big Weenie, Ass Like That, they're tracks that some people do find enjoyable and humorous, but I think they're also songs that make it very clear that Eminem was pretty deep into his drug addiction at this point.
Dr. Dre, I got a question if I may. Is it gay
okay to play putt golf with a friend. All you gotta do is pick up the phone and just dial up this number. It's 1-800 I'm a dick sucker. I love the sucker dick.
There's some missed potential on this album too. Mosh is one that I think is decent, but it's held back a bit by Eminem just sounding really tired on it. The Eminem Show has a bunch of political tracks like that where Eminem sounds really fired up, so in comparison, Mosh just doesn't have the right type of energy for what that song is, if you ask me.
Stomp, push, shove, mush, fuck Bush, until they bring our troops home, come on.
Evil Deeds starts off well enough and has great Dr. Dre production, but by the time you get into the second verse, Eminem has already trailed off into the trademark low-energy rambling that defines Encore.
Predominantly, everything's always predominantly white, predominantly black, well, what about me?
But it does have its redeeming qualities. The horrendous middle section is bookended by some great songs. Like Toy Soldiers is one of M's greatest songs. Mockingbird is a really moving one that I enjoy now even more than I did before, and One Shot Two Shot is a really entertaining song that has a rare, super enjoyable, bizarre verse for me, because it feels like it relies much more on actual humor and jokes rather than over-the-top shock value.
And I'm trying to run and get my motherfucking gun. Nigga, what about your wife? Nigga, fuck my wife. I'm trying to run and save my motherfucking life.
Like I said, there are some redeeming qualities of Encore, and at least there's plenty of Dr. Dre goodness in the production throughout. Fuck Rain Man and Big Weenie still though. It's not a great album, but I do think that it's a little bit better than Revival now. Yeah, it does have a few songs that are worse than anything on Revival for me, but a lot of the tracks before and after that really bad middle section are pretty damn good. It's weak enough to be this low on the list, but it still does have its highs.
It's on you, baby, 'cause you can be a star, no matter wherever you are. You're never too far from revenue bar.
In my 2016 ranking, I actually put Infinite at the bottom spot, but I've definitely gained some more appreciation for this album now. I don't have it super high up because it would never be my go-to Eminem album to listen to. It's definitely lacking in the individuality and personality of his later music, but as an early project to showcase rapping skills over simple, relaxed instrumentals, it's a cool listen. The intro track is amazing though. I've replayed that one countless times.
My coiled hands around this microphone are lethal. One thought in my cerebral is deeper than a jeep full of people. MCs are feeble, infinite. You heard of hell while I was sent from it. I went to it serving a sentence for murdering instruments. Now I'm trying to repent from it.
The rhyme scheme is crazy. I don't even know if all of it makes sense, but it sounds like most of it does. A couple songs also have a really warm, comforting sound to them with that smooth 90s production. Searchin' is a highlight here for that.
I've been searching, but you're the one I want in my life, baby.
But there's a couple of reasons that I'm suffering and grieving for loving and leaving. You're all I'm thinking of in the evening.
It's overall an album that just feels nice to chill and listen to, even if I completely understand why this isn't the music that blew Eminem up. Honestly, the weakest part on the whole thing for me is the 3 feature on Maxine. His verse just feels pieced together and isn't very smooth at all.
I met this girl last week, she was a freak, she liked it me, so I pinched up on it and asked my homie, and chill on the side.
And some of the sampling on the album maybe feels a little bit eerie when I don't know if that was the intention. But honestly, I really don't have anything super negative to say about it. It's just ranked this low because Eminem hadn't found his footing yet, so I rarely go out of my way to listen to it. It doesn't have the lows of Encore and Revival. It doesn't really have the highs either though. Those would both be higher for me probably if they didn't have a large percentage of downright bad songs. With Infinite, it's just a fine 90s rap project.
It's music to be murdered by, and why stop? Overkill like a pipe bomb in your pine box. You're all hits to my cock.
I quite enjoy the music to be murdered by era, even if Side B is definitely the weaker half of it. It works as a fun compilation of tracks where Eminem tries a few different things over a variety of beats, but it is pretty clear that this is just a bunch of leftovers thrown together for a project. Zeus and Discombobulated stand out as the clear highlights to me. Eminem flows smoothly on Zeus as he takes a look back at his career and talks about viewing the rap game from the perspective of someone that's been in it for 20 plus years and been at the upper level of it for most of that.
Once they start to turn their backs, they ain't never coming back, and they did it to chance next to be mentioned in future in the past tense.
And Discombobulated is such an amazing throwback to the Relapse sound that I didn't even know that I missed until I heard it. It's like a Relapse style track without super heavy accents.
Am I coming or going, man? I can't decide, cause back is forth now and stop means go.
Alfred's theme is perfectly fun and silly. Favorite Bitch has a great hook from Ty Dolla $ign and works pretty nicely as a metaphor for Eminem's relationship with hip hop. It's just an album where it feels like Eminem is having fun. He sounds super chilled out on this one. Like, this album is maybe the most relaxed that Eminem has ever sounded. There's none of the angry stuff on here, and he has a bunch of funny lines throughout. The only song that doesn't really work for me as a funny track is Tone Deaf. It just drags on a bit too long, even if there is some clever lines in there mixed in with the not so clever ones, like pissed offerson.
Bitch, I can make orange rhyme with banana. Eating pork rind, sword fighting in pajamas. At the crib playing Fortnite with your grandma.
Also, I was excited when I saw a Dr. Dre feature on Guns Blazing, but my god is that song forgettable. I literally forget how it sounds all the time, listen to it, and then forget again. But those are the only two major weak points for me. It doesn't make for an incredible album, but I find it as enjoyable as it needs to be.
Somebody tell Button before I snap, he better fasten it or have his body back and zip the closest thing he's had to hits of smacking bitches.
Kamikaze gets a lot of flack, I feel like, but I think it was a fairly decent recovery from the lackluster experience that was Revival. Sure, I'm not crazy about the mumble crappers content on here. It probably helped give further rise to your stereotypical inspired by Eminem YouTube rapper, but at least Eminem does it with a very high level of skill. It's an album that has a big focus on fast rapping and endless rhymes, and for me, tracks like Lucky You and Not Alike pull this off pretty well. Entertaining rap showcases over trap beats with really nice features.
Levels to the shit, I got an elevator. You could never say to me I'm not a fucking record breaker. I sound like a broken record every time I break a record. Nobody could ever take away the legacy I made. I never can. But next time you don't gotta use Tech 9 if you wanna come at me with a submachine gun. And I'm talking to you, but you already know who the fuck you are, Kelly.
And on the more emotional end, Stepping Stone is pretty cool as a track that covers the downfall of D12.
The longer we spend living this lie that we live, the less is left for closure, so let's let this go. It's not goodbye to our friendship, but D12 is over.
It doesn't sound the best in my opinion, but the subject matter is nice. One tiny little thing though, those last 3 tracks, get them out of here, cut them off of the album, and it would already be better. It's such a bad way to close out what I think is a mostly good album. An insanely obnoxious song, a super bland toxic relationship song, and then a very mid-movie tie-in song. The album ends with what is essentially movie product placement.
I got that adrenaline, not knowing when I'm
Head spinning, but medicine screaming, medicine like a salad bowl at your Alamo.
Could have done without those. Also, I do want to say it does feel like a very bitter album looking back at it now, especially with how much Eminem seemed to really mellow out on Music to Be Murdered By and beyond. I get that he wasn't happy at all with the reception towards Revival, but a song like The Ringer just feels so passive-aggressive at points that it kind of strips a lot of the fun away from it.
But saying I no longer got it cause you missed the line and never caught it cause it went over your head because you're too stupid to get it cause you're mentally retarded but pretend to be the smartest.
Overall, Kamikaze was a cool moment when it dropped. It was really fun to be a part of the discussions around that time because everybody was talking about it when it came out. That was really cool. But I do think the replay value of it hasn't been great over time. It's like such a product of 2018 that it's kind of stuck in it. It's an album that had an explosive impact, but I started to care about it a little bit less as the flames died down.
And I'ma keep on saying all the shit I should be hung for and probably kill for saying, and I probably will, but not until the day I pop a pill again like Job until I drop and still if that don't do the job of killing Jay.
Maybe the name for this is technically Shady 15. I am aware of Roman numerals, but I've always called it Shady XV just because I think that sounds better. I remember a lot of the discussion online when this album came out was about Eminem starting to focus less on subject matter and more on showcasing technical skill and rhyme schemes. And I mean,
Stuck in the operating room once, you done swapped your names with him, smuggled in Ronald Reagan. If you dug him up, Donald Fagan, while juggling waffles, bacon, a fucking McDonald's egg and cheese sausage bagel finagle. It's like a magic wand allows me to not let a blonde arouse me. If Ronda Rousey was on the couch with the condoms out, holding 1,000 magnums and wants to pounce me.
it's kind of like some runoff from Rap God, where it's like, it is impressive to make that much stuff rhyme, but in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't really mean all that much. But for a compilation album, it still has its strong points amongst that, and I think it's good for what it is. Fine Line is maybe a bit of an underrated one, honestly, and I know people are gonna comment about how that sounds in my accent. Fine Line, where M talks about the isolation that comes with the level of fame that he has, and how he wishes sometimes that he could just go to the grocery store and browse around the aisles without being recognized.
Sometimes I just wanna walk in the Target and look at shit browse. I don't even wanna buy nothing, I just wanna fucking walk around inside it.
Detroit vs. Everybody was great from start to finish. Vegas was really nice as another new dose of Bad Meets Evil. I've always enjoyed the gritty vibe of Psychopath Killer, and it has a new Slaughterhouse track on here, so that's cool for me too. On the other hand, it does have a pretty awful D12 track on here, but that's probably the only downright stinker for me on this project. As an anniversary compilation album, I like it, even if it does suffer a little bit from choppy flows and sometimes an overabundance of rhyme without much reason.
You pouted long enough, it isn't them, it's you fucking baby. We're worried about what they do and do shady. I'm fucking going crazy.
Fuck you, Pitchfork, and your 2.8 out of 10 rating for this album. I know I don't have this super high on my list, but that rating is just bait. Now I know, opinions exist and all that, and we all have different ones, but I wouldn't even give Revival a 2.8 out of 10, and that's on the bottom of my list. I will say Recovery is definitely a dated album with its super sugary sounding guitars and synth-based beats throughout. These are definitely some 2010 pop rap beats, alright, but on a lot of the tracks, Eminem's rapping is what makes them worthwhile for me. No Love and 25 to Life sound as mainstream and clean as possible, but No Love has Eminem going off for like 2 minutes on one of my favorite verses on the whole album, and 25 to Life is a really solid track examining Eminem's relationship with hip-hop.
But I'm not even in my harshest, you can still get roasted, cause Marcia's now mellow till I'm top, pulling from the top, I'm not gonna stop, I'm standing on my monopoly board. I fell for this so many times, it's ridiculous, and still I stick with this, I'm sick of this, but in my sickness and addiction, you're addictive as they can.
Talking to Myself is another one where the content really hits for me. We basically get Eminem's perspective on the 5-year hiatus between Encore and Relapse and his drug problem during that time. And for anyone who still had the Relapse itch, there were some tracks on here that were so clearly intended for when this album was gonna be Relapse 2. Cold Wind Blows and On Fire stick out like a sore thumb on what is a pop rap album.
Fuck all that love shit, honey, yeah I laugh when I call you a slut, it's funny, shorty dance while I dish it to the beat.
Seduction is also a song that I think deserves a little bit more love. Eminem glided on that beat. Recovery definitely has its issues. For example, I don't think it makes for the best start to finish listen of an Eminem album with its overwhelmingly built for radio sound. There's just something about the 2010 pop rap sound that can sometimes feel a lot cheaper than other eras of mainstream pop rap. There's not too many tracks that actually suck on here though. It's just an alright album that isn't necessarily my favorite type of sound to hear from Eminem anymore. Absolutely loved it when it came out, but my taste is a little bit different now at 25, about to be 26 years old, than it was at 11. Okay, the sun is going lower and lower over here, so the lighting might just start to get more scuffed right about now.
Let's begin, now hand me the pen, How should I begin it and where does it all end? The world is just my medicine ball, you're all in.
So Relapse was the first Eminem studio album that I owned, and I was 10 years old at the time. Yeah, couldn't fully process an album like this at that age.
I was born with a dick in my brain, yeah, fucked in the head. My stepfather said that I sucked in the bed.
Now one thing I appreciate a lot is the cinematic skits that are on here. The Dr. West intro for the album sets everything up perfectly. And Relapse went in a pretty interesting direction as a comeback album, with a huge horror vibe to it, and painting the picture of a psychotic, drug-addicted serial killer that might just be hallucinating half of the things that he's talking about. This is Eminem's American Psycho. Same song and dance, for example, has some unhinged lyrics, but I think it's great as a song that portrays a serial killer character.
No mask for this attack, I heard him say exact opposite the track. If that's a fact, it'll take task force to get you back, yeah.
I love horror movies, so it works for me. And the production across basically the entire album, especially on tracks like 3 AM, Medicine Ball, and Stay Wide Awake, outstanding. It's got incredible beats from start to finish.
You're walking down a horror corridor. It's almost 4 in the morning and you're in a nightmare. It's horrible. Soon as my flow starts, I compose art like the ghost of Mozart. Even though they all say that they're real, I know that most aren't.
Some of the more serious tracks are fantastic too. Deja Vu, for example, I'd consider that to be one of Eminem's top songs about addiction. It's dark, harrowing, and sounds incredible.
Go in the room and shut the bedroom door and wake up in an ambulance. They said they found me on the bathroom floor. Damn.
Beautiful is suitably depressing too. The only thing that holds it back for me is the thing that makes it so unique. The accents. It absolutely contributes to the concept of the album, but I just feel like it's laid on a bit too thick sometimes, especially on the tracks that don't really play into this serial killer concept. Like We Made You, for example, I just find the accents irritating on that track.
Man, Cass, I don't mean to mess with your gal, but Jessica Alba put her breasts on my mouth, bro. Wowzers, I just made a mess of my trousers.
Also, Underground gives us a little peek at how cool some of these more horror-themed tracks could sound with a little bit more of a normal delivery from Eminem. I really like that one. But hey, like it or not, Relapse is genuinely one of Eminem's most consistent concept albums. It really sticks to a theme. The album definitely is an acquired taste, but it's one that I've been acquiring a little bit more recently. And Refill is a great expansion too. I'm not going to talk about it for as long, but Hell Breaks Loose and Elevator are great. Buffalo Bill is perfect for the theme of Relapse, and Taking My Ball is so fucking stupid, but I find it really entertaining. A solid extended version of the album. If you like Relapse, you're gonna like what Refill adds onto it.
Trigger happy, pack heat, but it's black ink. Evil half of the bad meats. Evil that means take a backseat, take it back to fat beats with a maxi single. Look at my rap sheet. What attracts these people is my gangster bitch.
Music to Be Murdered By gets shit on a lot from what I've seen, but I honestly think it gets a little bit too much hate. This is a fun album with a lot of great rapping throughout. Like I said earlier in this video, at this point in Eminem's career, he seemed to mellow out quite a bit, and I really like his more relaxed style of delivery on this album. I did and still do have some issues with the sheer amount of corny dad joke style of wordplay on the album.
I said, go with you where? She said, out. I said, I'm a candle. I'll go out if you blow on me. Getting head in a bucket. Marshmallow, call us Long John Silvers cause we selfish. I'm talking euthanasia, like kids in Taiwan.
But when the music is solid, it makes for more of a minor issue than a major one. If the songs sound good, I can give a good chunk of corny wordplay a pass, and there's still plenty of clever lines and great verses on here. Favorites of mine are M's You Gon' Learn verse, Darkness as a whole, his Yaya verse, which is basically a love letter to hip hop, and Never Love Again, which is a really cool extended metaphor for his relationship with drugs.
Never sold dope from the gold rope. Wanted one though, they were so dope. Was a have not, cause my pockets didn't have knots. I was so broke. I could only take so much of you all at one time. Because too much you use just too much to swallow sometimes. Gotta take you in doses.
No Regrets has cool verses too, where he ironically talks about his regrets dissing Tyler the Creator and Earl the Hooded Sweater on Kamikaze. Also, the way M raps on Lock It Up, Probably the sharpest that his delivery had sounded at this point in a long time.
You give me the cue like I'm schoolboy, and I treat the beat like a pit bull with you to with truth and destroy, cause boy, I almost lost it.
Even some of the tracks that I used to dislike have grown on me a bit. I hate to say it, but Those Kinda Nights is just so goofy that it's kinda entertaining for me now. Is this what happens when you start pushing 30? You start enjoying the dad joke rap? It could definitely use a better hook. Ed Sheeran just kinda sounds weird on this album, but the verses put a smile on my face now. Speaking of hooks actually, there are a couple that are a bit rough on here. Marsh has really solid verses, but man, that hook does nothing for me. And Stepdad? Less said about that hook the better. It kinda makes the song a skip for me. Farewell? Absolutely horrible.
Gotta tell myself another lie.
It's got to only be on Curtain Call 2 because of the song name and its placement on that album, because that is not a classic. I also do still think it was a little bit of a missed opportunity to not go in a darker and more conceptual direction with an album that has this title, but I still really like what we ended up getting, so I can't complain too much. Eminem sounds comfortable on this album, and I think that's earned after 20 plus years in the game.
For a couple decades, been letting this text ray from that day that I met Dre. So you liable to catch strays from the second you press play.
Speaking of the more conceptual album that I kinda wanted music to be murdered by to be, we got the death of Slim Shady just a few years later. It's really nice to actually get another more conceptual album from Eminem this late into his career. I honestly thought he'd just be dropping music to be murdered by style projects for the rest of his career, so getting something that tells a little bit more of a story while having a bunch of great music throughout, yeah, I'm enjoying this one a little bit more than when I first heard it. Now, the concept that the album has maybe feels a little bit loose at times, considering that it just kind of ends after track 13, but it still makes for a fun album where we get to hear Eminem battle with his Slim Shady persona. I believe AI was used at some points on this album to help make Eminem's voice sound a little bit more like his older self, and honestly, I think that's a great use of AI in music. Now, a lot of people have debated whether or not AI was actually used on this project, especially after I think Fred Rex said that Eminem just did it all straight up, but I'm still certain he did use AI because other attempts Eminem has done at the Slim Shady voice before this album were nowhere near as clean and perfect as they are on here. Verse 3 of Habits is a super entertaining one that basically sums up the whole album. He's battling with his Slim Shady persona. He's addicted to it, but he doesn't want to go too far, and he contradicts himself a lot, and that's basically what the whole album goes with.
Only wait for me to explain it, yes I'm conflicted. Walking on eggshells like if I take it too far, is this it? Part of me gets it and wants to say I'm sorry and fix it.
The biggest highlights for me here right now are Lucifer and Antichrist, a back-to-back combo of some of the best rapping on the album in my opinion. Lucifer shows that Eminem is often at his best when he's rapping more steadily rather than at supersonic speeds.
They say I don't know struggle no more, that's a joke. Bitch, the fucking elevator in my mansion's broke.
And Antichrist has some of the nicest flows and well-executed edgier lyrics from Eminem in a while.
An insidious ass me, a spitting is nasty. Next idiot ass me is getting his ass beat. Worse than Diddy did.
These two tracks are my most replayed by far. The Death of Slim Shady also holds the esteemed record of being, I believe, the only album that a song has made me shed a tear from during a reaction. Temporary is an absolute heartbreaker, man.
I know that this is breaking your heart, it's the hardest thing I've ever wrote. Haley, sweetheart, it's okay for you to let me go.
I know a lot of people talk about Somebody Save Me because that's an emotional one as well, and it's a bigger hit with the Jelly Roll feature and the music video, but Temporary is easily the more emotional one for me. It does have a couple of weak points, but even those aren't necessarily major lows. Bad One feels like a pretty boring music to be murdered by side B leftover. Road Rage is still pretty bizarre with a whole verse ranting about obese people while ironically sounding like it lacks energy.
As it starts increasing, all that starch and grease and clogged arteries, and these are the reasons for your heart disease. And
only being saved by the Juvenile intro interpolation at the end. And Guilty Conscience 2 isn't a least favourite for me, but it's not a favourite either. I feel like it's an alright song that maybe feels a little limp as the grand climax for the album's concept and as a sequel to one of Eminem's most iconic tracks. I don't think it took the idea anywhere necessarily new or interesting, but I guess the sound of the track is pretty solid.
Yeah, I gave you power to use me as an excuse to be evil. I know. You created me to say everything you didn't have the balls to say.
I just wanted it to be incredible. As it is, it's okay. The concept isn't always amazing for me in terms of its execution, but overall, I do think that this is how you do a fairly good fan service album that also manages to stand on its own. It's a rewarding listen as a longtime fan of Eminem. I could never see myself placing it any higher than this number 6 spot, but it's a satisfying listen as a 2020s Eminem album.
The competition's miserable, we stomping bitches, this is no joke. Going overboard like someone threw us off the boat.
This is a project that I just want more of. Hell, the sequel, where are you at? This album dropped the year after Recovery, so it still had the more shouty delivery that Eminem was known for around this time, but honestly, I kinda liked that, and he made it even better here by placing it over darker beats. You've still got the poppier elements in there, the most notable example being Lighters, which is alright, it's a sweet track, but maybe just a little bit too watered down. And another one being Take From Me, which has the same brand of sugary guitars as Recovery has, but that one is a good one for me. I like where that goes with its content and everything.
You steal my thoughts, it's like driving a spike through my heart. You might not think it's that big of a deal to steal from me, but music's all I got.
And overall, the pop sound is a little bit more balanced out with the aforementioned darker atmosphere that this one has. That's how I'd describe it actually, a more balanced take on the Recovery sound. And I just love hearing Eminem and Royce going back and forth. They work so well together. Stating the obvious here, but they're both very skilled rappers, so it's pretty engaging hearing them going off over any type of beat.
Coming out your iPod, we come up in a place, chicks' heads start spinning like motherfucking white walls. Got your mother sucking my balls while we fuck each other, we punch each other in the eyeballs.
There's plenty of bars that are silly but entertaining, loads that are genuinely witty and funny. It makes for such a smooth listen that goes by really quickly, even with the deluxe version of it being 46 minutes long. Doesn't feel it at all. Sure, there is a part of me that wishes a little bit more of this project was focused on Living Proof style of tracks with more of a boom bap, hip hop focused sound.
I'm living proof, nigga. It's pretty safe to say. God give it, God take it away.
But I'm still happy with how this one turned out. It's just a bonus pick for this video, considering that it's technically an EP and not even a solo Eminem project, but if I like it enough to rank it this highly in this video, I think it's worth including.
The best part about me is I am not you, I'm me, and I'm the fire marshal, and this is my
legacy.
MMLP2 is such a great album. This is probably the point in this video where I'd have everything going forward rated as an 8 and above out of 10. Some of my favorite modern Eminem songs are on this album. I mean, you start it off with an absolute 7-minute beauty. One of the best Eminem album intros of all time, Bad Guy. Acting as a sequel to Stan, while simultaneously being a song where Eminem wrestles with his legacy and the idea of moving into the later stage of his career. Verse 4 is one of my favorite Eminem verses. That shit gives me chills still.
I'm the hindsight to say I told you so. Foreshadows of all the things that are to follow.
It's an album that often revisits some of the biggest talking points from throughout Eminem's career, whether that's his dad not being around for him, the bullying that he went through at school, his strained relationship with his mother, and giving us a more updated perspective on his Slim Shady alter ego. It was just really cool getting an updated look and some new perspectives on topics that Eminem has been addressing since pretty much the start of his career.
I went in head first, Never thinking about who what I said hurt in what verse. My mom probably got it the worst, the brunt of it.
The production is really good on the majority of tracks here in my opinion, and I just love the vintage feeling that a lot of it has. There's vinyl crackles throughout, songs like Love Game and Rhyme or Reason have a very old school sound to them, some throwback rap rock style of songs. It's just an album that I think is full of character. I will say, Rap God does feel like a bit of a weird one. Not only did it have drastic consequences for the YouTube rapper community, but it also just doesn't really feel like it fits on this album with its EDM influenced production. It just feels very weird every time it comes on. It's the YouTube dubstep intro of rap songs.
This flippity gibbity hibbity hip hop. You don't really want to get into a piss and match with this rappity rat pack and a mac in the back of the yak backpack rap rap yap 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 kitty yak nap.
And So Much Better is a song that definitely borrowed from Encore a little bit with its sound and obnoxious lyrics.
You feeling blue too late? Go smirk yourself. You make me wanna smirk and puke blue Kool-Aid. Here's what you say to someone you hate.
There are a small amount of weaker tracks here and there, but that is to be expected with an album that has 22 tracks on the deluxe version, and a lot of them try out different things. It's really not a short album either, 80 minutes for the standard version, 103 minutes for the deluxe, but it nails that balance of being consistent while still having a decent variety of song styles for me that I really don't feel the length in any kind of bad way at all. It's one of my go-to Eminem albums if I'm looking for a start to finish album listen because it usually just flies by. MMLP2 is, to me, the best modern Eminem album.
Hi, my name is. My name is. My name is.
The Slim Shady LP grew on me like crazy when I re-listened to it a few years back to make a track-by-track review of it for my Patreon. Not that I've ever disliked the album, but I just think up until that point I didn't really appreciate how great a lot of this is. It was hard for me to even pick my favourite tracks from this one because there were so many contenders. The two more emotional tracks, for example, If I Had and Rock Bottom, are great at showcasing the hunger that Eminem had to succeed around this time, and the struggles that he had with money before becoming a household name.
Tired of not having the phone. Tired of not having a home to have one in. If I did have one on. Minimum wage got my adrenaline caged, full of venom and rage. Especially when I'm engaged and my daughter's down to her last diaper. It's got my ass hyper.
Or the more wild, cartoonish tracks like My Name Is, Just Don't Give a Fuck, and As the World Turns, which are always so entertaining to listen to.
It all started when my mother took my bike away, cause I murdered my guinea pig and stuck him in a microwave. After that it was straight to the 40 ounces. 99% of my life I was lied to. I just found out my mom does more dope than I do.
I can see why the Slim Shady persona is what launched Eminem's success. These songs are so full of personality. I mean, compare this album to Infinite and the difference is just night and day. Eminem is compelling to listen to and stands out. The production is leaps ahead. Meeting Dr. Dre was the best thing to ever happen to this man. Not to mention, we actually learn more about the man Marshall Mathers on this album than we did on Infinite, despite the fact that he's mostly playing a character on this album. It's like it was a vessel for him to vent about his problems and talk about them in unique ways. This is the first time we heard him talk about Kim, Haley, being bullied as a child, Paul trying to censor him like the snake that he is. This was the origin right here.
Way before my baby daughter Haley, I was harassed daily by this fat kid named D'Angelo Bailey, an 8th grader who acted obnoxious.
And if that's not enough, it has the track Bad Meets Evil with Royce the 5'9".
Above the law, cause I don't agree with police either.
Shit, me neither.
We ain't eager to be legal, so please leave me with the keys to your Jeep Eagle.
It's so damn good, man. I love this album. Without this album, we wouldn't have got the Eminem that we did in the years following. That wouldn't mean too much if the music wasn't good, but if you ask me, most of it is great. Come On Everybody still doesn't work for me, but everything else, thumbs up.
Know why I say these things? Cause lady screams keep creeping in Shady's dreams, and the way things seem, I shouldn't have to pay these strings. It's 80 G's.
For the most part, the Marshall Mathers LP is a very over-the-top album, pretty much designed to annoy people who were criticizing Eminem for his outrageous lyrics. It's the next step up from the Slim Shady LP. He got criticized for his lyrics on there, so he turned it up to 11. And for the most part, I think it results in some great music. Some parts of it are too much. For example, I think this has one of the worst skits that Eminem has ever had on an album with the Ken Kniff skit. The sound of constant slurping on it just absolutely makes my skin crawl, and the whole point of it is to call the Insane Clown Posse gay, which is basically the point of a lot of the previous track on the album, Marshall Mathers. It's a skit I will never listen to again. And Bizarre's verse on Amityville knocks points off of an otherwise great song. It's just shock value that feels too devoid of humor to be enjoyable.
My little sister's birthday, she remembered me. For a gift I had telling my boy take a virginity.
But the pros far outweigh the cons. I mean, one of Eminem's greatest songs of all time, Stan, is from this album. Most Eminem fans know it word for word at this point, but if you haven't listened to it in a while and you decide to revisit it, how great the storytelling is just instantly washes over you again.
I love you, Slim. We could have been together. Think about it. You ruined it now. I hope you can't sleep and you dream about it.
Who Knew is one of the most underrated tracks on the album, with Eminem talking about the hypocrisy of people who criticize him for his lyrics. He just talks about it in such a compelling way with his rapping skill.
Wasn't me, Slim Shady said to do it again. Damn, how much damage can you do with a pen?
Same for Criminal.
Every time I write a rhyme, these people think it's a crime to tell them what's on my mind. I guess I'm a criminal.
A big theme of the album is basically, why am I the bad guy for saying these things and making fun of these things? Is it not a lot worse that there's people out there actually doing these things or actually having these beliefs? I'm Back has some of the most out-of-pocket lyrics that Eminem has ever laid down, but again, it's a very impressive showcase of technical skill. And the beat there is great.
But I don't give a fuck if this chick was my own mother. I'd still fuck her with no rubber and come inside her and have a son and a new brother.
Speaking of technicality and rhyme schemes, Drug Ballad is another super underrated one to me, with very catchy production and dizzying rhyme schemes throughout. And I really enjoy some of the more fun sounding tracks like Bitch Please 2. I don't know why Snoop Dogg has a ad-lib after Eminem describes his dick size, but it gets me every single time.
Big slim dog, 80-pound balls, dick 6-inch long.
It's an album that, yes, is edgy, but I think it does so with purpose and is an impressive piece of art. At the very least, it's worth listening to for the sheer skill that Eminem displays in his rapping. I also love how animated his delivery is on some of these songs, with him putting on multiple different voices within the verse. Verse 2 of I'm Back is a great example of what I'm talking about.
Slim, for Pete's sakes, put down Christopher Reeve's legs. Jeez, you guys are so sensitive. Slim, it's a touchy subject. Try and just don't mention it.
Honestly, the worst thing about this album is that it showed rappers like Tom MacDonald that being a controversial, edgy white rapper is a viable path to success. Tom just kind of forgot about the overwhelming technical skill, great production, and the being likable part.
Wishing they died, so they throw on a rap record and they sit and they vibe with nothing in you, but with the fucking shit in they eyes.
This right here. This is peak angry voice Eminem. He's yelling all over this album, but the intensity of it just works so well with an album that feels this charged. In my original discography ranking video, I had this album at the #1 spot, and it remains there now. The funny thing is as well, if I did this video in the past few years, MMLP probably would have took my #1 spot, but this re-listen to the Eminem Show just reminded me why I love it so much. I'd say the Eminem Show is the strongest, least flawed album of M's career, with an astoundingly strong track list and top tier production. To me, this is probably the best produced album in M's entire discography. It's just incredible beat after incredible beat after incredible beat. All the layers on Business that work amazingly together.
Let's get down to business. I don't got no time to play around. What is this? Must be a circus in town. We shut this shit down.
The intense anthemic sound of White America.
All I hear is lyrics, constant controversy, sponsors working round the clock to try to stop my concerts early. Surely.
The intoxicating seductive strings on Superman.
Can't be your Superman, can't Can't be your Superman, can't be your Superman.
Till I Collapse being the aggressive anthem of all anthems. There's just so many great pieces of music on here.
Till I collapse, I'm spilling these raps. Long as you feel them to the day that I drop, you'll never say that I'm not killing them.
And that's doubly impressive considering how involved Eminem was with the production on this album. Of the 15 songs, skits not included, Eminem has production credits on 12. His rapping is phenomenal too. Most of his flows are steady and fierce so that every line is delivered with maximum impact. For the content, it balances being somewhat political and personal pretty perfectly. A lot of the lyrics deal with the numerous aspects and pitfalls of being famous and being a rapper, with one of the focuses being Eminem's possession of a gun and an incident where he allegedly pistol whipped a bouncer. The 3-track stretch from The Kiss to Say Goodbye to Hollywood covers this really well.
Anything I do, bitches news. Pistol whipping motherfucking bouncer 6'2". Who needs bullets? As soon as I pull it, you sweat bullets.
And this incident is also incorporated into what I consider to be a top 3 Eminem song overall, Sing for the Moment. Then there's Cleaning Out My Closet. It's a track that Eminem has disowned now, but the haunting, visceral sound of it makes it an unforgettable one. It's one of my favourites just because of how darkly emotional it is. Even the gross sex song of the album, Drips, isn't downright awful to me. It does have some cringeworthy, gross out moments. Sour cream dip, anyone? But it's still well produced and kind of funny.
Then the doctor comes out looking like Dennis the Menace, and it's obvious to everyone in the lobby it's AIDS.
The only song I don't really love is Say What You Say. I know that I should love that song because it's Eminem and Dr. Dre rapping over Dr. Dre production, but I just find the beat on that one a little bit monotonous and plodding. It's one that I think is a little skippable on such a strong album. While the shock value of the Marshall Mathers LP is one of the things that makes it such a gripping listen, it still is pretty nice to see Eminem step a little bit more back from that on The Eminem Show. This is not a Slim Shady album. Like the title says, it's The Eminem Show. Okay, so my camera memory card is full, so we're just gonna have to finish this off camera. His life sounded stressful as hell around this time, honestly, but melting that stress down into an album analysing it all is what made for the best work of his career, in my opinion. I really did feel like MMLP was my #1 for a while now, but man, this album is just too damn good. One of my few 10 out of 10 albums in hip-hop, and one that will probably always remain is my favourite Eminem album. And so, that is my current ranking of Eminem's albums all the way from 1999's Infinite to 2024's Death of Slim Shady. How would your ranking differ? Let me know down in those comments below, and thank you for watching. You can click right there on the screen to check out my Death of Slim Shady reaction, and much love to my channel members and Patreon supporters, with a special shout out to I Am Regent, KWG13270, Lucas1123, Nail Striker, and Not Vimpan.